Hi everybody, this is Toffee bringing you part 2 of my Fire Emblem 9 Hard Mode 100% Growth LTC. After our sprint through the early game, we hit FE9's equivalent of the commercial break, where we will have a rash of maps that are turn flowed by being defend, the eventing, or having characters we need to wait for. Only 2 of the chapters in this video do not match that description. As of chapter 8, we will finally get access to the base feature, which will be a big part of the run moving forward. First of all, we get access to a convoy, meaning we no longer need to carefully juggle inventories, and we can dump all our extraneous gear there. We can also sell our growth band items, since this game doesn't enable any funny strategies with them. We also unlock access to the armory, vendor, and forging. We can forge up to 1 weapon per chapter, and we forge a max might iron lance just to have a powerful lance to use on someone like Oscar. I didn't forge crit on it because I intended to use it to train units, and I didn't want crits screwing up the routing. The exact gear sold by the armory and vendor varies from map to map, though the list of weapons that you can forge is a monotonically growing list, unlike with the armory and vendor, where sometimes like a weapon might be sold in one map and then disappear from the armory on the next map. We generally will look for javelins and hand axes and tomes from the armory, and we won't really bother too much with buying other kinds of weapons. I ended up overbuying gear in this run, but the game is fairly generous with money, so it's not really a big deal. Fire is the only tome we can buy for Chapter 8, so we have to get that for Soren, since the fire tome he got on the previous map is going to break partway through. His fire rank will not actually matter, since we're only going to get 1 meteor tome, and that tome is going to be piloted by a unit who can use it at base. Chapter 8 itself is a defend map where we get 8 turns to do what we can. Something the Tellius games uniquely have is bonus EXP. EXP that you can freely allocate to your units in the base that you earn generally by beating maps quickly or perhaps by meeting certain side criteria. This is an LTC, so we will have lots of it to dole out. On this map, every deployment slot that goes unused will grant us 50 bonus EXP, so we ditch Boyd and Mia since they're more useful as Bexp than whatever miscellaneous shoving that or body blocking that they do. Personally, I find the low manning Bexp objective really silly because to me, LTCs are at their best when they're not just incentivizing low manning and encouraging you to find applications for all of your units. Not all your units are going to be stars, of course, but with free deployment, there's still an opportunity for units to maybe do something. But when underdeploying people equals being rewarded, it just makes the run more degenerate. And honestly, this is one of my issues with Escape All as a map objective, because once again, it incentivizes just low manning as hard as you can instead of trying to deploy units who could maybe do interesting things. That's just my opinion anyway. Anyway, this incentive only shows up once more in this game, so it's not going to infuriate me too much. Also, because this game just enjoys being pointlessly tedious, like witness the slow animations that are forced, the way the bonus EXP formula and rounding work, it is optimal to dole out Bexp in small increments, sometimes as low as 1 EXP at a time. In my run, I wanted to keep my options open in case training random units could produce turn saves, so I went out of my way to allocate Bexp in optimal doses. As such, I will cut out the actual Bexp allocation from the videos most of the time because it's a thorough waste to watch me slowly give EXP 1 point at a time for the later levels. I'll just show the final results because that's all you really need to know in a 100% growth context, right? Anyway, I should also talk about the one recruitable unit on this map, Ileana. Ileana is early game Anima Mage number 2, specializing in Thunder Magic, which is nice because she will be our second bolting user for chapter 18. She will be recruited by having Ike talk to her on a later turn. She isn't going to be trained as hard as Soren, but we will eventually promote her. You can, in theory, have Ileana be the primary Anima Mage instead of Soren, but she would require a lot more Bexp investment, and Soren already grows a lot before she joins just from things he has to do for the early game clears. Since Ileana has D Thunder at base and comes with an L Thunder tome, which does give boosted weapon EXP, she can grind her Thunder rank to C relatively quickly. A lot of past LTCs trained Boyd as a filler unit in the early to mid game by allocating stray EXP to him that nobody else was taking. But we will instead use the opportunities that we get from Chapter 8 through Chapter 11 to train Ileana. She comes with the skill Shade, which is the opposite of Shanon's Provoke in that it reduces enemy targeting priority. It never really ended up mattering in my run, and I probably could have just unequipped it from her, where in case it ended up being a problem. But this is another point in Soren's favor, because Adept is more useful in general. Like, there are going to be places where Soren takes advantage of Adept to kill bosses, or just make it easier for him to kill bosses. Something I should also clarify is that while we need 3 bolting users for Chapter 18, we actually need to have 1 bolting user as early as Chapter 17-4, which is a job Soren will carry out, because why not deploy him for the 4-part map and have him grind EXP and Thunder rank there? I'm not really talking much about Chapter 8, because what's there to say? It's a defend map. We're just trying to farm EXP and get staff users in. Risk gets 7 mens over the course of the map, and the first men he used in the map let him hit C staves. Soren needs to promote during the next chapter, so any EXP he farms here reduces the amount of BEXP he needs to be given. Oscar eventually needs to promote by chapter 16, and he'll do filler cavalry things until then and farm whatever EXP he can. Despite being a 100% growth cavalier, he doesn't exactly supplant Titania for the first half of the game, because promoting him would take a lot of BEXP, since Talia's promotions by default only happen at what is basically level 21. And since we're in a sort of commercial break of FE9, you can imagine there is no rush to have an extra 9 move unit. Well, I'll meet you back at the start of the next chapter. Chapter 9 is a siege map, but the turn floor is primarily set by waiting for Marcia to show up so I can talk to her to recruit her. Marcia is our first flyer, so even an incomplete recruitment LTC would want to sit around and wait for her. We forge a max might, max crit iron axe to give Titania and later a couple of other axe users a nice strong weapon to use that can also crit any of the enemies that it would be relevant for, such as the boss of this map who has unusually high luck. Soren's been growing really well, but we want him promoted by the last couple of turns of this map, so we backspam him up to level 20. We can also finally buy him a Wind Tome and give him Ilyana's Thunder Tome, which will let him grind his more important weapon ranks. Something I should talk about are supports. They're built up 1 point per map by just being deployed together, and for once I tried to break out of my habit of being extremely conservative with them, and I tried to actually take supports as they unlocked. Because the universe loves a good joke, this actually got me into a bit of a pickle. I ended up maxing out Ike's supports and failing to get the Ike Soren B support, which turns out to be relevant for endgame. I did eventually figure out a workaround, which I'll talk about when we get closer to endgame, but just know that was a mistake that forced some last minute rerouting, including running away from the Black Knight fight. There is a reason, after all, why this run's title says it's 100% growth, except Enna. We're joined by a couple of new units, Rolf and Mist. Rolf is an archer with pretty crummy bases, but he has free deployment on this map. Mist is a cleric who joins with E-Staves, but she eventually promotes to Valkyrie, which has a horse, though it uses swords similar to female paladins from Yggdrasil. Mist will be the secondary staffer of the run, so I'll be optimizing her staff grinding alongside Riss and Soren. Despite the horse, Mist is probably less mobile than Riss on a lot of late game maps because Riss can be shoved by infantry and also carried around by mounts. However, there are a few specific occasions where Mist needs to use the rescue staff, specifically because of her horse or because Riss has other things he needs to be doing. And having a separate unit who can use Hamon will also simplify things in the late game. Rolf, Mist, Mia, and Ilyana all are incapable of shoving Ike, so there's really no point to them staying with the rest of the crew. Instead, they will sweep the beach. The sand on the beach would slow down our cavalry, so they don't really want to go there anyway. Ilyana's Elfhunder Tome has been set to have 100 crit, because then she can crit kill basically all of the enemies who will fight her. Mist will focus on getting staff uses in, so Ilyana does need to get hit along the way. Mia and Rolf are basically tagging along to assist with shove, and visit the 2 villages in the top left part of the map that contain a restore and a talisman. They're basically just equivalent to gold for us. The restore staff will be used on one particular map later in the run, though we could have just bought one in the base prior to that map, so all it's doing here is really saving us some money. This map also gave us ally units in Leafy and Mordecai. They'll join us for real starting with the next map. They are our first Laguz units, and they are both specifically Beast Laguz. Their base stats will be good enough for all the combat they do in the run, but the real selling point of Beast Laguz is that they're the only units in the game who will be able to shove our mounted units. At least the only units who have any reasonable amount of availability. Since mounted units cannot rescue drop each other like they can in GBA, being shoved by a Laguz is the only way they can gain squares. Leafy is a cat, and she starts every map transform, which makes her immediately useful in an LTC context. Beast Laguz have 7 move untransformed and 9 move transformed. Leafy has 31 weight when transformed, which is fine for now, but it will not be enough to shove male paladins later in the run, which is a problem we will have to address when we get around to actually promoting male cavaliers. Mordecai, on the other hand, starts with an empty Laguz gauge, but he has the skill Smite, which lets him shove a unit 2 spaces instead of 1. Expect to see the both of them deployed a lot in the future. Riss couldn't possibly use Mend on turn 1, which is why I had him use Ward. On the subject of staff rank grinding, I've already mentioned that Soren's staff rank was entirely irrelevant to the run, but I feel like it would get repetitive if I just said that every single time I show off a staff EXP optimization I came up with for him. So I will commentate the future clears in the mindset I was during the run, where all the focus on him was potentially relevant. Even in that case, however, the fact that I freely burned a use of Ward here should tell you that it will not be as tight as the staff rank timeline in a game like FE8. Soren initially uses Wind on this map to hit C rank for Blizzard, since his Thunder rank will be raised to D for free on promotion. You could already see enemies on the previous enemy phase preferring to target Titania over Soren. Ilyana wanted to dodge one of the 2 attacks on turn 1 enemy phase so she could actually survive, but she wanted to get hit at least once in order to maximize Mist's healing opportunities in the future. I don't believe Ilyana runs a chance of death on any of the turns after the first enemy phase, because that Veninax Brigand who is in range of her will prefer to go after the villages. However, she very much needs the max crit on the L Thunder in order to muscle through enemies like the Mage. Mm-hmm. 100% growths guaranteeing HP level ups is really nice in terms of helping staff users have consistent heal targets. And in fact, given that we have access to bonus EXP, we will actually use bonus EXP in order to artificially create turn 1 level ups for our staffers in the future. Now that Soren hits Sea Wind, I had him switch over to Fire for this enemy phase. Since he already hit D Fire on the last map, he can actually meaningfully grind his Fire rank. It doesn't ever end up mattering, but it's certainly more useful than wasting Thunder uses when he's not actually going to meaningfully gain Thunder rank from it. Marcia shows up at the start of turn 4 and she'll fly up to Ike. Our plan is to have Marcia help rescue chain Ike to the front as soon as she's recruited, which is why we will be positioning Oscar and Titania accordingly. However, they're not going to be enough to get him all the way to the front, so we need 6 shoves across turns 5 and 6. Boyd and Risk can cover 4 of those shoves, but the last 2 are the reason Soren has to promote. Theoretically, you could 5-turn this map while recruiting Marcia if you could promote Mist and Soren with Bex, but you don't have enough even when handing it out in optimal doses. Soren was almost at promotion, so he finally breaks out Thunder. He will promote in the middle of the enemy phase, which is a mechanic that I believe is unique to this game, since all that's required to promote is hitting level 21. And once he promotes, he will start meaningfully increasing his Thunder rank. Promoting on enemy phase is quite unique, like I mentioned. I wonder if it'll have any implications on the later parts of this run. Interestingly merciful thing about this game is that the EXP falloff for being higher leveled is much more gradual than in other games. Soren vastly outlevels these enemies, but he's still earning reasonable amounts of EXP from them. Sages get to choose between staves and knives on promotion, with staves being the obviously better option. The only reason knives are even offered is probably so the game has an excuse to not give you any pre-promoted staff users, forcing you to train up your own. The one point of Constitution is what lets Soren have exactly 2 less con than Ike, which is the requirement to be able to shove him. The 2 mages next to the boss are stationary. Something worth bringing up is that there are technically alternatives to promoting Soren for a 6th turn of this map, though the units in question aren't early game anima mages and hence are suboptimal EXP targets. Promoted Mia can also shove Ike, while promoted Boyd can do one better and actually help rescue drop Ike, which would eliminate the need for shoves. Missioner's run actually promoted Boyd to do exactly that, and he proceeded to do nothing of consequence for the rest of the run. Thankfully, we will not need to do something that ridiculous. One of the 3 enemies who spawned in at the north is an optional boss, but unfortunately he's not going to be getting into Ilyana's attack range before we need to finish the map. Probably is a way to feed the boss kill on this map to Soren. If you like played around with the rescue chains a little bit. But it's okay. Titania is still relevant, and we do want her to at least be able to one round stray generic enemies, so the EXP on her is not entirely wasted. Liana's level up will get missed her last heal in. I'm pretty happy that I was able to get 5 heals in unmissed while also managing to visit the village and feed all this EXP to Ilyana. We'll just clean up everywhere, shove Ike 3 more times, and that'll be chapter 9 in 6 turns. Chapter 10 is an arrive map and actually won't slow us down. We need to open a couple of doors to recruit some units and get Ike to the arrive point, though he can be in saddlebags. I didn't really talk about Marcia much last time, so let's take a look at our first flyer. Marcia will immediately get some Bex to fix her base stats, along with a nice max might, max crit Iron Lance Forge to let her punch through bulky enemies on the next few maps. You'll also notice we give Ileana some Bex, but this is not for her sake, but instead for Soren's to get a turn 1 level up to give him a staff target. Anyway, Marcia will do many things in this run with her ability to fly over terrain, and importantly, she's also light enough for all of the Beast Lagoos to be able to shove her, even untransformed. However, her promoted strength cap of 23 will hold her back later in the game, to the point where we will actually come up with ways to keep her out of combat. This map finally lets us buy Thunder Tomes, which will be our stock weapon going forward. We're joined in preps by Volk, our first thief. Much like Ileana, he has Shade. Volk has a unique mechanic where he charges 50 gold for every lock he picks, but we can certainly afford his services. Thieves in this game can steal unequipped weapons and staves. We won't usually have time to get Volk over to the really juicy stealables, but he will nick a couple of staves later, which are money, I suppose. Shade also lets him be deployed on some maps without immediately turning into an enemy magnet and hence interfering with our combat routing. The prior full recruitment LTC did not actually obtain the Master Seal, which is one of my improvements. It's a droppable item on the boss, and Master Seals are the only promotion items which can let units promote before level 21. They're basically just a way to save Bex on certain units who might want to be promoted to do something, but their actual stats aren't too critical. Dropping a boss killer in position requires Titania to start from the best spot and get boosted 4 squares. To do this, we have Lethe shove her once on turn 1, and then have Lethe and Mordecai boost her 3 more squares on turn 2. This map is supposed to be a stealth mission, but we immediately triggered the reinforcements because they're EXP, and the stealth clear would be far too slow for an LTC anyway. Ileana will clean up all of those enemies who showed up behind us, since nobody else has the time to stay back and fight them, and this will get her to see Thunder. We do freeze the RNG to ensure Ileana will dodge all the attacks on turn 1 enemy phase, since her bulk definitely is not good enough to handle all of them hitting her. I should probably discuss doors. Doors in this game are breakable, so you don't necessarily need to get thieves or door key users to them, but their exact HP varies from map to map. Axes do effective damage to doors. The only door keys we'll get in this entire run are on this map, but we actually will only use 1 charge of them. The 3 recruitable units on this map are Nephany in the northern cell and Braum and Kieran in the southeast cells. Nephany and Braum are just filler foot units. Nephany has Wrath, but neither of them bring anything to the table in an LTC like this. Kieran, on the other hand, is an Axe Cavalier and will be an actual EXP target. Much like Oscar, we need him promoted for Chapter 16, so we'll be trying to feed him EXP wherever we can. As for Marcia's promotion, we want her to promote for Chapter 14. As a matter of fact, even an incomplete recruitment LTC would want Marcia promoted for Chapter 14, which is a change which I will show off later in the run. Like, maybe you could get away with not doing it, but then you just lose access to a certain resource indirectly. Marcia's crit Iron Lance is going to come in handy on this enemy phase, since she needs to crit both of the Armor Knights, and the extra crit that we forged makes that tolerable to rig. We need to get Ike into saddlebags on turn 2 so he can be handed off to Titania on turn 3. Moving Oscar up his full move like that will cause the soldier up top who drops a chest key to actually attack Oscar from the right, so he won't get in the way. Though we'll still have Lethe kill him in order to get our hands on the chest key. Titania needs to equip a hand axe to enemy face the archers to ensure that the square for the boss to attack Soren from doesn't get blocked. We unfortunately did not have the time to get any of the treasure chests on this map. The treasure chests on the left would have some gear, but like none of it is critical. And there is a chest at the top right which has a statue frag. This is the plus constitution booster, and really the only reason to even bother with the statue frag is on a Lagoose in order to improve their shoving capability. We would have liked that on Leafy to secure her future shoves, but it's okay. We'll get another chance to get one. If Titania procced counter, she would have killed that soldier, assuming the soldier actually landed a hit on her for her to proc counter at all off of in the first place, of course. But that would have deprived Oscar of a kill. Honestly, there's an argument to be made to just unequip counter on Titania specifically to avoid variants like this. Sora needs either a crit or an adept proc to one round Danomil. Over here he just gets a crit. Sora will retire from combat for several maps after this, as he will just be spamming staves. He'll kill the Halberdier in order to clear the way to the escape point because he's a promoted enemy and he gives more EXP. We just clean up everywhere and that'll be chapter 10 in 3 turns. Chapter 11 sees us go back to maps that will slow us down. In this case, we're waiting for a future recruitable to spawn in on turn 5. In the meanwhile, we'll have a chance to feed some units and grind our staffers. In an incomplete recruitment run, you could go for a 3-turn clear of this map. We don't need to forge any more iron weapons, so we take the chance to set up the first of our tome forges for later in the game. I could have forged max crit on this thunder, I just didn't. We also buy an extra heal so we can grind all 3 of our staffers here. There is a Bexp side objective on this map, and it's leaving the Vigilantes who are level 1 enemies alive. They're worth a lot more EXP as Bexp than as kills for our units, so it's just a little more effort for us to optimally farm EXP. That doesn't mean we're not going to take advantage of their presence though. The actual objective of chapter 11 is to have any unit arrive at the escape point. We'll send Oscar, Marcia, and Titania towards it to farm EXP and handle the boss along the way. Volk will tag along with them to grab a village and also nick a heal. And Kieran will start his training arc here by farming EXP. His middling bases mean he won't cleanly kill things without crits. I forgot to mention this earlier, but he comes with the skill Gamble, which is terrible. It cuts hit rate in half and doubles crit rate when you activate the Gamble command, but I believe it halves hit after applying the 100 cap, which means that it effectively has a 50 hit cap, which is terrible. We will actually use it once in this clear though, because it saved me some RN burning due to how the RNs were laid out. The other units we have will mostly stay near the start. Feeding EXP to Ilyana is kind of a waste here, because she already hit Sea Thunder and her exact stats are not too important for what she needs to do. So we could maybe have fed more EXP to Ike back at the starting area. Marcia is once again going to use her crit Iron Lance to punch through the Armor Knights who attack her. We're being pretty aggressive about cleaning out the enemies near the starting area, which might confuse you if you're wondering how exactly I'm going to generate staff targets for all of my staffers on all 5 turns. The only reason we're leaving this particular soldier alive is to generate a couple of extra staff targets. But what, and also feed the kill to Ilyana. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna do this little trick with Riss and Mist. First of all, Riss was very close to a level up, so that means that his level up after healing Ilyana sets up a turn 1 staff target for Mist, where importantly they both end up on those particular squares. This will bait over the 2 vigilantes up north who were just barely on screen earlier, and those vigilantes will spend the rest of the map repeatedly attacking Mist and Riss, and that way the both of them will have their staff targets for the remaining 4 turns of this clear, and we only need to worry about setting up heal targets for Soren. Doing this will also get them out of the way for Leafy to go talk to Zehark, a recruitable Myrmidon, without having to kill them to get us more bonus EXP while still meeting our full recruitment criterion. In an incomplete recruitment run, you'd probably skip Zehark, and in this run, his only contribution is going to be visiting the Killer Lance village. Zehark comes with the skill Adept. POR sluggish animations do accentuate the high bulk of the enemies. That probably was not intentional, but we gotta tell ourselves something as we watch time flow into the abyss playing this sluggish game. I don't usually, I'm usually not this harsh on games performance. It's just Path of Radiance forcing battle animations. It's a real change from something like the GBA or the 3DS games. Since we baited the 2 vigilantes over, we need to envelop them to ensure that they don't end up flanking our healers and ganging up on one of them, since that would not work for what we have planned. I don't really have all that much to say because this map is at a fairly relaxed pace. There are a couple of thieves, and Marcia and Kieran will each kill one of them, since thieves do have the EXP bonus that you would have seen them give in GBA. Since Marcia is the next unit we need to promote, any EXP we feed her will save us Bex in the future. Her stats actually will matter, so we don't want to just give her the Master Seal. As for being weak enough to get in a round of combat without killing the Vigilante Mia, that gives us an extra staff target. With Kieran, we need to be cognizant of enemy retreat AI since he has issues one-rounding things. We also have to strategically bait the one range vigilante away with Mordecai to ensure he doesn't die to Kieran. The other vigilante has a hand axe, so at the very least, his self-preservation AI will keep him from suiciding. I guess I could talk about the Laguz gauge mechanics a bit. Every Laguz character has a predefined starting value for their Laguz gauge. So, for example, for Lethe, her Laguz gauge always will start at 16, while for Mordecai, it starts at, I want to say, 4? And the idea is that every turn that passes by, that the Laguz is untransformed, or more exactly, at the start of a player phase, if a Laguz is untransformed, they get 4 Laguz gauge, and every turn that a Laguz is transformed, their Laguz gauge goes down by, I believe, 3. Getting into rounds of combat as an untransformed unit will boost a Laguz's gauge, and similarly, getting into combat as a transformed Laguz will wear their gauge down one unit at a time. This means that Laguz can probably not handle some of the really big enemy phases, but at least not they can't handle multiple big enemy phases on consecutive turns. But thankfully, the Laguz in this run are mostly relevant as shove bots, and the combat that they have to do is incidental, and the Laguz gauge is generous enough to let them handle that combat. We unequip Mia to ensure that the fighter that Mordecai baited over before transforming would go for her but not be at risk of death. With a hand axe, we could have chipped the boss on enemy phase, but it's not really needed. The enemy phase after we bait the boss over, the Black Knight will spawn from the village in the center, and he will murder any of our units in range. Though if none of our units are within his attack range, he only will move 3 squares per turn. Thankfully, Mia and Lethe are exactly 1 square out of his range on turn 1, and or at least the turn that he spawns. And the next turn after that, which is turn 5, we will simply just end the map. And yeah, that is where Kieran used Gamble because of how the RNs were in the string. Marsha will, of course, take the boss kill. See, there isn't all that much more to say, so I'll probably just wrap up the commentary here. That'll be chapter 11 in 5 turns. So far, we've lost 2 turns to a theoretical incomplete recruitment turn floor. Chapter 12 is a rough map. In an incomplete recruitment run, you can two-turn the map, but we need to wait a couple of extra turns for Jill to show up and recruit herself. In the pre-map dialogue, we recruit Soph, a secondary thief. He has the Blossom skill, which is a strict liability in a 100% growth context. Soph's stats are terrible, but there are a couple of maps where having a second thief is nice, so he will get deployed there. We forge another Thundertome, this time only with crit and not might. This is for one particular late game boss with higher than normal self-preservation AI. We can also buy Ment starting from this chapter, which is great because Mist hit D staves and hence wants to upgrade to it. It's a boat map, and what that means is that Marcia is the only unit who can get to enemies out on the water. As such, most of our deployment slots are kind of superfluous, though we do bring all of our staffers and will employ a trick with Bexp. Since our units cannot engage in combat on turn 1, it would appear that we cannot get heal targets on turn 1. However, by Bexping Riss and Mist to be close to leveling up, we can have Riss use Ward to give Mist a Ment target, and Mist can then level up to give Soren a turn 1 heal. And by turn 2, we will have baited a couple of Ravens over to us, and by engaging in combat with them, we can produce staff targets for the rest of the clear. The enemy Ravens double and one round our healers, so we cannot employ the same trick we did with the Vigilantes last time. But as a trade-off, the nature of the terrain surrounding the boat means protecting our healers from the Ravens is not as hard as it would seem. Boyd makes his return on this map because he can get doubled by the enemy Ravens without dying, acting as a consistent staff target. First Raven Lagoose who goes for Marcia needs to roll 15 speed for her to double him. Though in this case she just crit him instead. But she doubles up right after that and doesn't need to worry about enemy stat variation afterwards. Path of Radiant's boundaries, such as the walls of the boat, count as 3 tiles of distance, preventing the Ravens from just attacking Riss from the left, letting him stay safe. Kieran is the only unit in the entire Nod squad who is seriously being trained and will hence be prioritized for kills on the Ravens. Everybody else is just there to help enable our staff grinding or ensure that our healers don't get attacked. Dunk's Shade skill comes in handy here because it means he can engage the Ravens on player phase and they will not just dogpile onto him on enemy phase. The only thing we can do to expedite Jill's recruitment is to drop Ike onto a lone land tile a little bit to the south of where the screen was. I can take this chance to talk about Jill. Jill is our second flyer and is noticeably heavier than Marcia. She has as much weight as a male paladin would even when she's unpromoted, and promotion will only increase that even further. This makes her hard to be shoved or smited around, but that's okay. Like, we mostly need our shoves and smites only on our primary flyer. In an LTC context, she basically compresses several roles that would normally require investing in multiple units into one, almost a reward for doing a full recruitment LTC. She has a better strength cap than Marcia and can also use axes after promotion to further amplify her damage output. Her base speed is pretty bleh, so we'll need to dig her out of it. Jill masks Zihard's recruitment cost on the previous map, and she will help recruit one unit in the future and also will directly recruit another unit later on. So she really is the mascot of Path of Radiance full recruitment, I feel. Boss has a Demiband equipped, which lowers his stats a bit in exchange for staying permanently transformed. And indeed, all of the Laguz bosses that we face in this game have the Demiband equipped, presumably to prevent the player from cheesing them by forcibly untransforming them by peppering them with ranged attacks. She can cleanly one round the boss with a forged Iron Lance, though she does need him to not proc his miracle skill. Soren will hit D staves with his next heal, so he can join the Mend crew as well. I sell off all of my heals after this, though I do end up rebuying one heal much later for an extremely minor EXP optimization. Anyway, I'll end the commentary there. That will be chapter 12 in 4 turns. So far we've lost 4 turns to a theoretical incomplete recruitment run. Chapter 13 is another boat map, though much more involved. It's a defend map that can be cut short by routing all the enemies and getting all the treasure chests, which could theoretically be done in 4 turns, but the eventing for the map forces a turn floor of 7 turns, so it functionally is defend, just like the objective claims. I forged a Min Might Wind Tome here because I thought I might need it for chapter 16, but as it turns out I didn't, so it was just a waste of money. I give Jill a Seraph Robe and Speed Wings. The Seraph Robe is not really needed, but the Speed Wings will dig her out of her doubling issues. There is another potential application for the Speed Wings at the very end of the game, but I'll talk about it when we actually get there. This map has a low man bonus EXP objective, much like chapter 8, but we'll still full deploy because we want to shove Ike a number of times on turn 1 so he can get our recruitables immediately. And we also want to deploy all of our staffers since we can actually set up staff targets for them and a couple of thieves so we can get all the chests without burning up our chest key uses. We do this little shove on Soren so he can get a full 7 mens in on this map. Both Riss and Mist will get 6 mens each. We will recruit Gatry and also get a new unit, Astrid. Astrid has Paragon, which means she can grow incredibly fast, and she brings the Nightward, an item that grants +2 defense and resistance to cavalry, armors, and soldier line units who equip it. It also grants a 30% speed growth, but that's irrelevant in 100% growths. I didn't make use of it at all to avoid accidental +2 level ups, but I'm sure more bulk would help Oscar, Kieran, or Titania at some point or the other. I would have liked to train Astrid as a flex, since she actually only takes about as much Bex to promote from base as Kieran does. But the jobs that require training a Cavalier specifically require a male paladin for the weight, so she sadly cannot do anything for us this run outside of intentionally getting damaged on this map. Oscar, Kieran, Jill, and Marcia will all farm EXP, with Marcia taking the boss kill since she needs to promote for the next map. Green units are rather weak, but they will act as staff targets for us, and we'll actually end up rescuing some of them just to make sure that they don't heal themselves up or end up suiciding into the enemies or even distracting the enemies too much beyond what we want for our EXP allocation. I don't really have all that much to say, so chapter 13 will be done in 7 turns. I'll catch you with the next map. Chapter 14 is a kill boss, but at least nothing is slowing us down, and it'll be a quick little 2-turn clear. It's the second and last Fog of War map, and this is the only map where the Tart staff is buyable. We'll buy a copy for our staffers to spam. We bex Marcia to promotion, so she can recruit her brother Makalov, since she needs the extra move to get him to move towards us on turn 1. Promotion gives her access to swords, which she'll use exactly once, though a might-reduced Slumlance would probably have done the trick in that case. This map will also finally let us start forging steel weapons, and we'll first forge a steel lance to give Marcia and Jill a stronger weapon to punch through enemies with. We'll also max out its crit to give us more options. The boss of this map is stationary and one range locked, so we can feed him to Soren, who hasn't fought in a while. Titania needs to be boosted 3 squares to drop Soren in one range of the boss on turn 2. Luke is brought along so he can use the torch to actually expose Makalov, so we can talk to him on turn 2. Unfortunately, because Soren needs to be dropped on turn 2, he needs to end turn 1 in saddlebags, and hence he can only get 1 torch use in. Titania's combat really is starting to fall off. She's having issues actually one-rounding enemies. Though granted, she's using a regular hand axe and not some forged weapon. The village in the bottom left gives a spirit dust, which I don't believe we actually end up using in this run. At least Titania could set this kill up for Jill comfortably. Even though this isn't a defend map, there isn't too much to say. Like, the map is just way too short, and kill boss as an objective is extremely straightforward, unless you do something weird with the criteria to even spawn in the boss, or if the boss is not trivial to actually fight. I suppose I can talk about Makalov. In a full recruitment context, the only thing Makalov does is supply us his starting inventory, which includes a red gem, and visit the village to get us the Vantage manual, which is just potential money. We don't end up selling it, Oh, missed hit C staves over there, meaning that she can use ward. But yeah, Maklov. In a full recruitment run, he's not particularly important, but in an incomplete recruitment run, you would actually want to promote him for chapter 16 in order to get the full god. You can probably get by without the full god, but having it is definitely nice. The reason in full recruitment we don't need Makalov for that is that Jill can do the job that he would have to do in chapter 16. Because that particular job, all it really needs is a mounted unit who can carry untransformed Mordecai. Like, it doesn't actually need 9 move, which is why like unpromoted Jill can handle that job. In an incomplete recruitment run, Makalov would be a great candidate for one of the Master Seals, given his long-term stats are not of consequence, and it really is just that one map. I should have given Soren L Thunder for this map, it just slipped my mind. A few enemies will attack us, and then the boss will die to Soren, who kills him cleanly, and that'll be chapter 14 in 2 turns. Chapter 15 is our standard Fire Emblem Desert map, though this time it's a kill boss. It's also the last map where we will lose turns to a character recruitment. We forge a max might, max crit steel sword for Ike to use in the future for incidental combat. Thieves and mages have unrestricted movement in the desert here, so we will deploy Soth and Ilyana to help pick up some items. And the Lagoos have lower terrain penalties than our other units do. We actually want to avoid killing the enemies, since there is a Bex bonus for keeping the enemies Lagoos alive, including a special bonus for keeping all of them except the boss, who obviously needs to die, of course, alive. So the map is going to end up being very simple. Marsha will fly up to the boss, picking up the boots along the way. We could beat the map in 2 turns with the boots, but we have to take an extra turn to recruit a unit in the top right part of the map by having Lethe or Mordecai stand on a particular square. This is Jill's sole unique contribution to the run. As her second flyer, she can ferry Lethe, who has better move by virtue of being transformed, to the recruitment point. If Jill were not transformed, Mordecai would not be able to smite her, but as a trade-off, she would have one more move, so she could still make it to the necessary squares to drop Lethe and get the statue frag. We once again bring Boyd, since he can get damaged without hurting the enemies too badly. We best miss to be close to leveling up, so we can once more perform the ward trick by also taking advantage of Soren being close to a level up to give all of our staffers a turn 1 staff use. Missed hitting ward rank on the previous map let her benefit from using ward instead of Riss needing to. There's no desert item trick here, so we have to rig each pickup. It's well worth it, since a lot of the treasure here will get put to use on future maps. The boots will of course go to Marcia to make her the most mobile unit in our army. The statue frag will go to Lethe to let her shove male paladins, which will matter as soon as the next map. Kieran and Oscar were brought here pretty much just to grind their support. We unequip Marsha to keep her from accidentally killing the one Raven who attacks her on this enemy phase. Gets damaged pretty badly, but his counter crit means that that Raven is going to prefer to heal on the next enemy phase instead of trying to attack him again, which gives him some breathing room. The new unit we're going to gain on this map by having Lethe stand on the spot in the top right is Stefan. He comes with Astra, the Swordmaster class mastery skill, with solid bases. He won't matter much as a combatant, but in the late game we will need to do a lot of shoving, so Stefan will help out there. At the end of the map we will also recruit Morum and Tarmod, but I'll talk about them next time. Black magic tomes are quite expensive and would make for great selling fodder, but because we're actually going to use Risk, we will actually put that Shine Tome to use. I think this map is the final time Bide gets deployed in this playthrough. Because after this map, we are going to move out of the commercial break. There will be one more defend map, but the deployment slots are quite restricted for it, given the nature of how Chapter 17 works. Stefan can get us the white gem over here. We just clean up everywhere and Marcia will kill the boss to complete chapter 15 in 3 turns. So far we've lost a total of 5 turns to a theoretical incomplete recruitment turn floor, and I believe that is all the difference there would be between a full recruitment and an incomplete recruitment run.